The mark of the beast. You know, for a lot of people, that phrase brings up all these images of some far-off apocalyptic future. But what if this ancient warning isn't really about something that's going to happen, but a choice that we're all facing right now? Yeah, I mean, when you hear mark of the beast, where does your mind go? For most of us, it's straight to things like microchips under the skin or some kind of high-tech tattoo, something that's forced on people against their will. It's a really powerful image and it's super common. But let's just flip that for a second. What if the prophecy has nothing to do with being forced to get an implant? What if it's actually about voluntarily accepting a certain kind of system? A choice. One that's been on the table for humanity for thousands of years. And believe me, it is very much still on the table today. Okay, so to really get to the bottom of this, we've got to go back to the source. The real meaning, you see, it isn't hidden in some wild speculation about the future. No, it's right there in the original Greek language and the world that existed when these words were first written down. So let's break down the words. We'll start with the big one, charagma, which we translate as mark. Now, this is crucial. It doesn't mean injection or microchip. In the original Greek, it meant something like an etching or a stamp, a mark of ownership, kind of like an emperor's seal on an official document. It was literally a badge of servitude. It showed everyone who you belonged to. And what about how you get this mark? The word used in the text is lambano, and this just means to take, to grab a hold of, to accept something that's being offered. The key here is that it's a voluntary choice. It's not forced on you. An offer is put on the table, and you decide whether to accept it or not. And then, of course, there's the beast itself. The word is therion. Its root word, thera, actually means a trap. So right away, we see the beast isn't some literal monster with horns and claws. It's a metaphor, a symbol for a specific kind of government system. A predatory one that, well, it traps its people, usually by promising them security if they'll just hand over their freedom and their loyalty. Okay, so if the mark is a badge of loyalty to a predatory, trapping system, what would the original audience have pictured? I mean, what was the biggest example of that in their world? It was staring them right in the face, the Roman Empire. You have to remember, the Roman Republic didn't stay a republic. It slowly morphed into this massive socialist welfare state. It gave out free bread in circuses to keep everyone happy and distracted. But that free stuff came with a huge price tag. Crushing taxes, a massive government, and the slow erosion of individual freedom. And to manage it all, they needed to know who was who. The Roman census, believe it or not, was often called the badge of servitude by the people. And this wasn't just some abstract idea, it was a real physical part of their lives. Rome had all sorts of tokens and IDs. They had the pinakion for citizen duties, the tesserae, which was basically a token for getting your social welfare benefits, and then there's our word again, the charagma. It was a clay or metal tablet used to identify slaves, but also to show your job or social status. So, this idea of needing a mark to buy, sell, and get government benefits, that was just daily life in the Roman world. An ancient system of control based on benefits and identification. Does any of that sound, I don't know, a little familiar? So let's ask the question, how does this Roman beast cast its shadow into our world today? And when you put them side by side, the parallels are pretty stunning. Rome's free bread and circuses, well, that looks a lot like modern state welfare and benefits. Their identification tokens, their charagma, that lines up pretty closely with our government-issued numbers. And the oaths people had to swear to Caesar? Think about the pledges and social contracts we have with our governments today. So here's the real takeaway. The image of the beast probably isn't a talking statue or something like that. It's a system of government that mirrors or replicates the structure of that old Roman beast, a system that gets its citizens to depend on so-called benefactors who then, in turn, exercise authority over them. And that, of course, brings us to the number, the one everybody knows, 666. Okay, now here's something you might find interesting, just a modern parallel to consider. In the United States federal law, the specific section that governs state-run benefit programs, we're talking child support enforcement and a whole list of other things, the law that requires a Social Security number to participate, well, it just so happens to be found in Title 42, Section 666. Look, this idea isn't new. This isn't some modern conspiracy. The philosopher Plutarch, writing almost 2,000 years ago while living under this very Roman system, he warned everybody. He said the real threat to people's freedom isn't an invading army. It's the person who hands out bounties, donations, and benefits. It's that slow, comfortable slide into dependency. So if accepting the mark means choosing to put your allegiance in that kind of system, you have to ask, what's the alternative? And what happens when you make that choice? This is where it all comes down to the ultimate test of faith. Now, we often hear that the consequence for taking the mark is torment. But let's look at that word too. The Greek is basanimos, and its original meaning wasn't torture. It was a touchstone. You know, the special stone that goldsmiths used to rub gold against to see if it was pure. So it's not about being tortured, it's about being tested. It's a trial of your character, a test of your faith. And that right there puts the two choices in stark contrast, doesn't it? On one hand, you have the mark of the beast. That's allegiance to man-made systems, depending on state benefits that are paid for by taking from others. It's a badge of servitude. But on the other hand, you have the mark of God. That's putting your faith in God, living a life of hope in voluntary charity under what's called the perfect law of liberty. That's a seal of faith. So you see, the mark of God isn't some physical brand either. It's the evidence of living a totally different way. It's choosing a life of faith, hope, and charity. It's loving your neighbor as yourself. It's taking care of each other through voluntary fellowship, not forced programs. It's choosing service over servitude. It's having the very character of God written on your heart and in your mind. And so, when you strip it all away, this ancient prophecy boils down to one simple but profound question for every single one of us right here, right now. Where is your allegiance placed? Where do you put your faith? Is it in the systems of men that promise to take care of you, or is it in a kingdom of God based on faith, liberty, and genuine charity for your neighbor? Hey, if this explanation gave you something to think about, if you found it valuable, do us a favor and hit the like button, subscribe, and maybe share it with someone you know who's also wrestling with these kinds of questions. Your engagement really does help other people find this information. And one last thing. If you want to go deeper and actually connect with other people who are on this journey, who are actively seeking God's kingdom, we'd love for you to join the Living Network. The link for that is right down in the description. Thanks for spending this time with us.